Welcome to the Tuesday Review. I'm Nathan, as always, joined by James and Callum in the studio. How you going, guys?
Good.
Not bad.
Good. Tonight we're going to talk Batman.
Yeah, we finally...
Gritty's Nirvana soaked 90s Batman.
Better late than never. We finally got around to it. How long's it been out now? 2 months?
A little while, yeah.
Yeah, we were originally going to come back and review it like the week after it came out, and then we, everything got in the way,
look,
and then we couldn't do the show, and then we finally got the show back on track, and then we went on hiatus again, and it's just like, oh my God. So finally we'll just get it out of the way.
That's it.
Finally review the Batman, because I feel like this is going to be an interesting one to talk about, because everyone hyped it up, and it got such a great reception, such a positive reception, and we three went to see it when it came out, and I won't speak for you guys, but I think you agree. We felt more like lukewarm towards it, maybe.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think that it was hyped up quite a lot.
Yeah.
I liked it, but it certainly wasn't the perfect film. There were a lot of issues with chemistry. The emotional range that Bruce Wayne displays is a bit limited, whether that's by design or just awkward
they did it on
acting.
purpose, but we'll talk about why it's not a good...
But that being said, there were some cool moments. There's some cool ideas.
Yeah.
Room for growth, considering, as we'll talk about later, the sequel has been greenlit.
Yeah.
So
that was
so that there could be an emotional arc that carries through.
Yeah.
So it's not the worst movie I've seen this year.
I think people's general reaction, like with these big movies come out, it's like, oh, best Batman movie ever, best this, and honestly, it's not as good as any of the Dark Knight movies. It's not as good as Batman '89.
No,
and it has a lot of problems, which we'll talk about.
It seems to lack an identity. I know that sounds dumb, but when
it doesn't lack an identity, but its identity is based on other properties.
Yeah,
let's just begin talking about it.
Spoiler alert.
You were doing the list.
Yeah, spoiler alert for the new Batman,
Yeah.
The Batman. If you haven't seen it, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
It's Batman. You're gonna watch it anyway.
Yeah. You were doing the list, and I'm thinking, as you're saying them, I'm like thinking of the movie in my head. I'm like, 89's Batman had this quirky, whimsical kind of interesting approach. The Nolan movies, of course, had that grittiness, but also Nolan is just an amazing director. So they had that Nolan-esqueness to them.
Here's the thing. Like, before the new Batman came out, I went back and I rewatched all the live-action Batman movies.
Even Batman v Superman?
No, I watched Batman. I watched Batman 1966, Batman 89, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and the Dark Knight trilogy. Plus, I watched all the Batman animated series related movies, Mask of the Phantasm, the Batwoman one, Sub-Zero, Mr. Freeze, and the Return of the Joker, the Batman Beyond movie. So I went on this Batman Odyssey. I didn't watch Batman v Superman because it doesn't count. I didn't watch Justice League because it doesn't count. And they're both awful. So I was all primed up for the Batman. And while watching the Batman, I'm like, I can see what they're doing, but previous movies have done it better.
Yeah.
And more succinctly. This is a 3-hour film, and it's a before the movie came out, it's a detective story. Batman, it's a mystery, it's this long, and at the end of the movie, I love long movies, but I'm like, this didn't need to be this long.
There could have been at least 20 minutes, half an hour. There could have easily just been cut out.
Considering how long it is, they didn't pack in as much character development as the Dark Knight movies, or even some of the 90s movies, or even Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah, what character development with Bruce Wayne specifically?
Well, see, this is the problem. There's so much to talk about, and we honestly don't have a lot of time. And it's been so long since we saw the movie. I saw the movie with you guys and was kind of like, I don't know if I liked it that much. And then I went to see it again with another friend. I'm like, can you please see this with me? And just so I can sort of see what my actual feelings
someone to talk to
are.
about it fresh. Yeah,
and it's just like just to watch it again now that my initial reaction is out of the way. And I watched it again, and it's just like I enjoyed it more because I could just sit back and not have to. But the cracks started to show, and honestly, this movie starts to fall apart after that car chase with the penguin.
Yeah,
it's just like weird CG.
Yes.
Yeah,
and like the whole time I'm watching that car chase, and it's very arty and stylish, and I'm just like, you know what, Nolan would have done this better, and he wouldn't have done it practically.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, I know this film's more arty, quote unquote, but I'm like, what is this? Also, it doesn't make any sense. It's this huge, there's cars and trucks crashing, and I'm like, Batman is killing all these civilians. I know it's the Penguin's fault.
Yeah,
but I'm like, what is
just
this?
let him get away. Real Batman would have let him get away, so people wouldn't be in
or
danger.
He would have been smarter about.
Or like put a tracker
chasing
on the
him,
car.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
But yeah, it's like this version of Batman is
pretty chaotic in his own way.
Yeah, like I understand that this version of Batman is like the young.
Year one,
inexperienced. Yeah, he's in year 2 of his career, and it's based heavily on year 1 in the comics. And it's like, it's not an origin story, thank God, because we've seen that so many times. But basically it is, because...
He's not the full-on kept crusader that you're
Exactly.
familiar with from the comics and the games and all that.
And so it's a 3-hour movie where it's just like, it's not an origin story, but it basically is. And I probably would have rather they just did an origin story, because they're kind of skirting around the actual...
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of just going in...
They've got
depth
got one foot in, one foot out, and it kind of shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can feel it.
I think, and going back to what James was saying before, the fact that it's somewhat of an origin story, but it's not so Bruce is still sort of finding his footing in both worlds of being an Avenger and also being like, a billionaire playboy kind of role. But he just ends up with him really in most of his scenes when he's not fighting people in the suit. Basically, he's just dead inside and doesn't care about anything.
I understand that this version of Batman, Bruce Wayne technically doesn't exist. He's Batman all the time.
Yeah.
He's so broken inside.
But that's not entertaining.
Exactly. He's so broken inside that we never actually get to see Bruce Wayne be Bruce Wayne. He's always Batman. He's always in that goth I am vengeance mode. I understand what they were doing. But for a 3-hour movie...
Yeah.
You want to see a little Bruce.
Yeah.
A charisma.
It's like, and at the end of the movie, he finally realizes there's this awkward narration where he's just like, I finally realize I can't just be vengeance. I have to also be a symbol of hope. And so that, to me, suggests that in the sequel, he's going to learn to be both Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And all I could think watching
That's what this movie should have been about.
Yeah, all I could think watching, I'm like, Batman Begins does this in the first half an hour.
Yeah, that's what I was
It's
going to
like
say.
Batman, Bruce Wayne realizes he has to be both Batman and Bruce Wayne. He has to put on a show for the...
Like, at worst, that should have been a trip that started at the beginning of the film, an emotional journey, I should say. And then he carries that through the slow transition to being both by the end of the movie, instead of it being
packed
I'm
into
vengeance until the last 10 minutes, and then maybe I
When
shouldn't be vengeance.
Yeah.
In that one little 10-minute slice.
Yeah, when he like awkwardly realizes at the end that the Riddler thought he was an ally.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no.
I know I come across as a sociopath,
but
I'm not. Maybe a little bit.
Are we the baddies? Yeah.
Am I the baddie?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, you kind of have some of the same mental health issues that some of you bad guys might. You just have a different lens.
That's the thing. That's the thing with Batman for the last 30 or more years. It's just like that's like part of what the comic books and fan interpretations and comic book writers is just like, is Batman as crazy as the villains? Does Batman incite the violence in Gotham? And this movie deals with some of that, where it's just like him just being Batman makes Gotham worse. Crime goes up, and he questions
The
that.
nature of the crime changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's like I understand what they're doing, but again, a 3-hour movie, by the end of it, I was just like, you needed a lot more meat on them bones. It gives the illusion of meat. See, this is why people are talking it up so much and saying how great it is. It gives the illusion of substance.
The quality versus quantity argument.
Yeah, it's just like when you actually start to think about it, it all falls apart. The movie's not actually as smart as it presents itself as.
Yeah.
And one of the ways it presents itself as being smart is by being a 3-hour long detective movie and taking a lot of visual inspiration from, and thematic and story inspiration from Zodiac and
Yeah.
like that, those types,
Like Seven-ish kind
Seven,
of.
that's what that's exactly.
Yeah.
So Seven and Zodiac, those types of movies.
Like a grimdark detective
Yeah.
mystery movies.
Yeah, and so it's just like people watch it and they go, "Oh, this is so deep and so, adult." And
90s grunge detective.
yeah, and it's just like once you actually start to thinking about the mystery and the plot and the character growth and all that, it's just, it starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
The visuals are quite strong, but also
Well,
I've seen Seven, I've seen Zodiac.
Yeah.
Like
I have to say, I was pretty wowed by the opening. That opening sequence, where it's Halloween.
oh yeah,
And you get to see everyone in their costumes,
Yeah.
and it's all sets, and they're walking through, and the camera pans around.
yeah,
I was like, wow, this is awesome. If the movie looks like this the whole way through, we're in for a winner.
yeah.
And of course, it's like they used all of their visual creativity in that one opening sequence, and then everything kind of just gets brown after that.
I mean, yeah, the whole movie, is visually interesting, but they do. Sometimes they're trying to be too arty for their own good,
yeah.
especially during action scenes, which generally aren't that great, except maybe the last one where he does some cool Arkham Asylum spinny stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the more I thought about it, the more it starts to show its cracks.
Yeah. I think that their presentation of Arkham, it's Gotham City, I should say, itself was really interesting. That mix of kind of like sci-fi, but also gothic architecture, the neon lights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was really nice. I haven't seen it presented that way before.
Yeah, it's just like the whole like the Wayne Tower and the gothic architecture and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's a very visually strong movie, but I think that's why a lot of people just accept
people
it.
get confused. People confuse, I should say, good production, good cinematography, good sort of. We'll say they confuse money with quality.
Yeah, that's true.
So then when they see something that looks really good, it sounds really good, it's got A-list actors in it, they think this must be amazing, right?
Yeah.
But obviously when you sit down and think about it, it's not as good as they want you to believe it is.
Look, unfortunately, it's been so long since I've seen the movie that
we can't pick out...
It's starting to just sound like we're talking gibberish. So I'm going to go to my notes that I took down 2 months ago when I saw the movie, and then when I saw it again, and hopefully we can make sense of what I was trying to say back then, and hopefully that'll lead to some larger conversation. So I'm just going to go in order. When the movie starts and it has that big red logo, it's like, wow, this is a cool comic booky thing. It feels very much out of some of the newer Batman comic books with that big red font. And then the narration starts. And I was like, is this the first live action Batman with narration? And even though I rewatched all the movies, I couldn't actually think.
It might be.
Yeah, and I'm like, I liked it because it's very Rorschach, but it felt...
It was very Rorschach,
but it felt like the comic books, like when you're reading
like you can see that you can...
Yeah, the little yellow bubble or whatever of like him describing his routine and stuff.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't happen again until the very end of the movie. So that felt a little jarring. If you've listened to this show, if listeners remember throughout the years...
James does not like narration.
I do not like narration. If you're not Scorsese, generally just don't do it. You know, I mean, there's some cases where it's done well, but yeah, like it's mainly lazy. But in a comic book movie, it makes sense because it's built into how
built
comic
into the
books
story.
are told.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that there's such a long gap until the end of the movie where it's to explain to the audience that he's learned, you know,
Yeah.
Because we can't show it, we have to tell it.
Yeah.
That's how writing works, guys. Tell, don't show.
Yeah, tell, don't show. Like we said, Gotham City is very strong visually.
Yeah.
I mean, I really love the Dark Knight movies, but one thing they lose over time is that they look very clean. It's basically just Chicago or whatever they filmed at the time. After Batman Begins, they kind of move away from that Blade Runner-y, smoky, gothic kind of neon, and it becomes more, straight.
Yeah.
Nolan,
A bit
very
more grounded,
clean, and yeah. And I love Gotham when it's presented as this crazy, that's why I love
dystopian, alternate bizarre New York.
Yeah.
It's bizarre 80s New York. It's dangerous, it's grimy,
Yeah.
but it's also kind of the future.
Kind of, weird, retro, futuristic, Art Deco,
Yeah.
gothic.
Batman's whole ethos is like dangerous 70s New York. That's what he lived. That's
Yeah,
that's his
30s.
his thing.
When he started in the
Yeah.
30s, his whole thing was just like taking down the
exactly.
crime, all the So yeah, I like visually that's pretty good. We already talked about how it's an origin story, but not an origin story, and they need to kind of figure out what they're doing there.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of inspiration from Year One and Long Halloween. So we were just talking not long ago about how it takes a lot of inspiration from Seven and Zodiac, and I feel like that's one of the reasons people gravitate towards it and why it's getting such positive reviews and why people are saying, "Oh, it's so great and so smart." But I feel like it's sort of the same way. It has the same problem as Joker, where Joker was basically just a remake of King of Comedy and Taxi Driver, and people really gravitated towards Joker. I'm like, oh my god, it's so smart, it's so gritty, it's such a great movie.
It's
and
a
I'm
comic
like,
book movie for adults.
Yeah. And I'm like, but it's just a remake of better Scorsese movies. And while Batman isn't as bad as a Joker in that way, I think it has that same problem of like nostalgia for a specific genre or filmmaker.
Of a specific time period.
And then recreating that well, and then people are like, wow, so cool. I'm like, but I've seen Zodiac, I've seen Seven. Like,
If I wanted to watch Seven, I'd watch Seven.
Yeah.
It's a better movie.
Yeah. Also, so because this is newbie Batman, like he's still sort of inexperienced,
figuring it out. Yeah.
His costume. So this is one of the problems I have with the movie, is the costume is like bulletproof. So he has the technology and the expertise to make a really high-tech battle armor.
Yeah.
But the cowl is like just cheap leather, and you can see the stitching and the stapling.
That's aesthetic, James. I'll tell you right now. They did that because it looks cool.
Yeah, but
Capital L, capital C.
I'm like, but why can't he have an armored cowl? I'm like, oh, because this is inexperienced new Batman. It's just a new Year One costume. I'm like, but he has the bulletproof suit. You see bullets bouncing off.
Yeah.
Is it because they wanted to distinguish him visually from, say, Batfleck?
But you can. I'm not saying he has to be robo armored like in Batfleck, but I'm just saying like, they have to choose. It's an origin story, but it's not.
It sounds
he's
like
high tech Batman, but he's not.
It sounds like a dumb creative decision they made. Like they were trying to make him
I would rather, if this is inexperienced new Batman, I would rather the whole suit be more
leathery.
Yeah, like look more like a costume.
Like in '89 Batman, where he just gets beaten up.
Well, he has bulletproof there, but it's not.
No. But Michael Keaton takes a hit every now and again.
Actually, and that's another problem, which maybe we'll talk about a bit later, is how the Batman in this movie is supposed to be vulnerable. He's supposed to be more human and grounded and realistic. He's supposed to be more inexperienced and get his ass kicked a bit more. But he's got a bulletproof suit.
Yeah.
So literally guys will shoot at him and it'll just ping, 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 it's like sparks, and he'll be fine. And I'm like, what are you trying to do here? You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
Why isn't he more vulnerable?
It's like I was
if he
saying,
gets shot, he should be in a bad way for the rest of the movie. That's more interesting.
Yeah. So the way I think about it is that when you think of Batman now, right, you think of he does have the metal suits and all of that, but they want it to be a younger Batman, but they want to play with that idea of the grunginess of the whole thing. It's like an aesthetic thing.
I understand that.
So
but
in there,
then they do the thing of like he has the bulletproof suit. He's also got those contact lenses with the recording and the supercomputer. And I'm like, they're trying to have it both ways.
What I'm saying, what I keep trying to say, is that we're overthinking it. It's just a dumb decision. That's all it comes down to.
It does just come down to
it
looks
comes
cool.
To, yeah,
it'll
no,
do.
Someone in charge of this of the costume design or the production was like, I think it'll look really cool if it looked like this.
Yeah.
And there was no
But it's
necessarily a reason behind it. It was just like, looks grungy, bro.
No, yeah.
Green light.
The short answer was bad decision. Dumb decision. But yeah, I'm just trying to expand upon it into saying like I understand why they chose that decision, but they were also trying to have their cake and eat it too, kind of thing.
Yeah,
where
it's
it's just
dumb.
like, it's like, oh, he's new, inexperienced, he made his own suit, but also it's super high tech and he's got all these gadgets.
Yeah.
I'm like,
It smells like multiple cooks to me.
Yeah, it's
So
like
there was a conflict between two people.
Homeboy needs a concussion or two, and then he'll get to the metal helmet.
yeah.
Yeah.
But see, all this stuff happens in like the first 45 minutes of Batman Begins.
Wouldn't it be
When
funny?
his helmet gets
If
cracked.
It'd be funny if actually
He started
it
out
would
with a
be-
leather helmet in the first 10 minutes.
It'd be funny if he gets a head injury and Alfred's like, nah.
Yeah, we
bro,
got to redesign. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
the metal
But see,
helmet.
like, because there's been so many Batman movies before this, and Nolan's movies were already the grounded, realistic Batman movies. Now they're trying to be even more gritty and realistic, and it's just like we already seen that. Like Nolan did it fine, and these movies make Nolan's movies look comic booky almost because of even though those are the grounded movies and they have to explain where the technology came from and stuff. These movies are just like, no, everything is grounded, everything is realistic.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, there's all this dumb comic book shit happening, and I'm like, they're trying to have it both ways.
Yeah.
I'm like, choose one.
It sounds like I'm sure they all had a vision they all pulled for, but I can't help but think that there was at least one creative clash and there was some meet in the middle moments. And that's a part of the reason we have what we have, because it doesn't make sense that there be such a, like, it's patchwork. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you get bits and pieces from all the different ideas about what we think Batman should be.
Yeah.
And then we get this, like, I like the film, but it is a patchwork mess at times. When you, like you said, when you look at it critically, it doesn't hold up.
Yeah, they were trying to have it both ways, and they should have just picked one. Is he high tech Batman or is he inexperienced, low tech Batman?
If they wanted to make him inexperienced, he should not have been that effective in combat. You know what I mean? They should have training sections where he's Bruce Wayne trying to get better, learning from Alfred.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's
like,
one of my problems. We talked about how the Batman in this movie is just Batman all the time. He's never Bruce Wayne. I'm like, and we never get to see him developing as either Batman or Bruce Wayne, really, in terms of his combat or his techniques.
Traditionally, to your point, the most important relationship in most of the Batman comics is the one between him and Alfred.
Yeah.
And one of the problems
that's not developed well either.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The problem with not having a Bruce Wayne character in the film, so to speak, the problem with not having him learn outside of being the Batman is that you don't get to flesh that out, because most of the interactions you get, the best interactions you get between Alfred and the Bat are when, you know, Alfred's stitching him back or Alfred's going over something with him. They're doing detective work together, maybe even training together. We don't get that type of connection between them because it's just not there until maybe the very end of the film, in which they hint
there's
that
there's like two scenes
which,
of them.
you know, they leave the most important character development till the very end of the movie.
Yeah.
And then maybe we get to see that actually have an impact in the sequel.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I think this is my problem is I've been saying to a lot of people, like, I understand what they're doing, and that the second movie will
Address
these,
things.
but it's just like this happened with Force Awakens. I'm like, we shouldn't have to wait to the second movie.
But
to
I don't have the
explain-
second movie. I just have this.
Yeah,
Exactly.
arcs should be
Right?
developed in
And-
the film.
And even if the second movie is the best movie ever and explains everything so well,
It still
it
doesn't
means that
strengthen the
this
first
movie
film.
is lacking.
Yeah.
And especially in such a long movie where they have so much time to develop the characters, they don't. They spend
Yeah.
it all. They spend the whole time on the plot and the mystery.
Like, they could
which
have
when you
cut-
start to think about
Yeah.
the mystery, which we'll talk about later, that falls apart.
They
as well.
could have
Now,
cut
the-
most of the Kingpin stuff out, right, and just had the Carmine Falcone stuff.
Falcone, yeah, Kingpin.
Kingpin. What do you mean?
Kingpin. I mean the Penguin.
Yeah.
Right? They could have cut most of the Penguin stuff out
Yeah.
and just had the Carmine Falcone.
Yeah, well,
stuff.
that's why when the movie starts to fall apart during that car chase, where it's just like, why are we spending so much time?
And-
Also, I should say, Colin Farrell is probably the best part of this movie.
Yeah.
He's so good as the Penguin. It's crazy. But I'm kind of like, yeah, I felt like...
or link the Riddler to the Penguin. Then it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, they're setting him up for the sequel and for the
He's got his own spin-off show,
DC
yeah.
spin-off show. I was
Jeez.
like,
Can we
Jesus
also
Christ.
can we also talk about the cat in the room?
Yeah, well, let's move on. So, just real quick, Robert Pattinson, before the movie came out, everyone was like, oh, he's this, he's that. Is he going to be good? What's this? What's that? I thought it was going to be good. The movie comes out, he's fine. And I think one of the reasons he's just fine is because all he gets to do is the one mode.
He just gets to be
Yeah,
the
I would say
Batman.
It's not
Yeah.
his fault
I
that
think-
he is not that great
Yeah.
in this movie.
I think the sequel, like we just said, will show
More
more range,
potential, yeah.
more development.
Yeah, and
But in this, he just has the one emo mode.
yeah, and the whole fact that everyone talking about this movie talking about how good his chemistry was with Catwoman.
Well, yeah, that's what we'll get to next.
like,
is
excuse me, did we watch the same movie?
when they cast Zoe,
it was awkward.
when they cast Zoe Kravitz, I'm like, oh my god, that's perfect. She's gonna be so good. Can't wait to see her. Movie comes out, she's fine.
Yeah.
And again, I think this is just a symptom of the writing
Of the script, yeah.
And it's just like she's not that well developed. She doesn't get a lot to do in terms of performance.
Yeah.
And then when you put them together and everyone's talking about their great
Yeah.
chemistry, I didn't feel that at all.
What
No.
chemistry? There was like none there.
People have been telling me, oh, they have such great chemistry.
They,
I'm like,
yeah, they don't. Though.
Anne Hathaway and Christian Bale had better chemistry in Dark Knight Rises in like the 3 scenes they had together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when it's just like this movie is such a weird.
It's because like when you make the Batman so broken and
He's
so
cut
and
off
so shut off,
emotionally, Yeah.
chemistry can't exist.
Again, they're trying to have it both ways. He's
Yeah.
cut off emotionally and he's not allowing himself to be close to anyone. But also, you have to believe in the romance between him and Catwoman, which they end the movie on.
Yeah.
In the literally the last shot of the film is them parting ways,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to be this bittersweet, tragic moment.
Wiping
And
tear away.
yeah, and I was just like, you had 3 hours, and I don't feel that this is worth, like, you earned this.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because you saw it twice. I only saw it once.
Mm.
When they kiss in that scene,
Yeah.
does the Batman just kind of stand there awkwardly?
I don't remember, but probably.
Because I was like,
Yeah.
well, there's something Batman would do, I guess.
Yeah.
But
But it's like,
it's a
but
movie. It's not a comic book.
Even like Batman Returns, which I actually have a lot of problems with, that the Catwoman Batman relationship in that movie is so interesting, and the whole thing at the end of that movie where it's just like, can't I just be Bruce Wayne and can't you just be Selina?
Yeah.
And there's this conflict of this fractured personalities. Like literally, Catwoman in Batman Returns has like a schizophrenic double personality kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like, can't we just
Be together.
be normal
Yeah.
together? And this movie could have done that in a more grounded, realistic way. But I don't really see that it did anything.
Did you
See,
ever-
this all comes back to what we were saying about how Bruce Wayne cannot have any emotion whatsoever. It'd be more interesting
Yeah.
if he was Bruce Wayne, because then they
Well,
could
I mean,
actually have a
you've got-
relationship outside of their costumes.
You've got 3 hours, so it's like you could literally spend an hour and a half of closed off Batman, and then an hour and a half of like
Slightly
opening up
opening,
Batman.
Yeah.
You know, like you could go through a journey of. I
It's
feel like
does Batman or does
also-
Bruce Wayne laugh once in this movie? Does he chuckle at a joke that Alfred said?
well, see, that's not out of character for
No,
Batman
but
to
you know
not
what I mean.
laugh.
I'm saying, does
But-
he show any other emotion other than just
Yeah,
angry and
he's got
sad
one
face?
mode, yeah. Except for the thumb drive bit, which is
Yeah,
a
get a
funny
thumb drive.
Yeah. But I feel like there's also a moment, and now I'm forgetting because it's been so long. But there's a moment where Catwoman disappears for almost an hour. I want to say. I think I wish I could.
It is something that I
Yeah.
remember. Yes.
Yeah, it's just like towards the end, maybe 45 minutes from the end, maybe an hour from the end, and it's just like her plotline gets dropped and they pick up the Riddler plotline again or something like that, and you just don't see her for a really long time, and then she comes back at the end to kill Falcone, and then there's the big climax at the stadium, and then she comes to help Bruce Wayne, and I'm like, there was a long bit where it's just like,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
weren't even, or is it the opposite? I think they dropped the Riddler plotline. Oh, they dropped the Riddler plotline so
Yeah.
that they can do the Catwoman
I
trying to
know.
kill
I remember there being
Falcone.
something weird.
And
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
I remember being like, wait, the whole driving force of this movie is that there's a serial killer who's not
Yeah.
gonna stop anytime soon, who's announcing his victims, and and you've just forgotten about this for an hour to focus on
Daddy issues.
daddy issues,
Yeah.
which is fine, but also like, shouldn't there be a race against time element of
If
like
there
there's a
was-
serial killer?
Yeah, the
we have to
tension
find
just
him before
evaporates.
his next
Yeah.
And if you
victim, which
did-
they don't, the Batman just fails this entire movie.
Yeah.
He fails.
If they did want to approach it that way, they could have at least set up a better chemistry between the two characters.
Yeah.
So at least that way, Batman could be like, "Look, there's this thing, but she
They
really needs my
also-
help. I can't let her down." You know what I mean?
They also need to flesh out her roommate friend character,
Yeah.
who's seen like partially off screen and then disappears and then is found as a body later, and we're
Is it-
supposed to care.
You shouldn't be able to note what is a writing object
Yeah.
in the script. You know what I mean? Like it's like, it's like MacGuffin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You shouldn't be able to easily pick out, oh look, that's a plot
Yeah.
point. That's there just for reasons.
There needed to literally just be one scene of them together in the apartment going like, oh, we don't have enough money. We got to get out of here. Something like, and they kind of do that, but it's like weirdly off screen while Batman is heavy breathing, watching them through the window.
Yeah.
And then you just never see her again. I like, and it just becomes like nothing.
It's a waste of time and energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
We might go to a quick ad break and we'll be back right after this. You're back on 98.9 Northwest FM. We're talking everything Batman tonight.
The Batman, not about the founding of Melbourne. Disappointing.
One day we'll get our movie.
That guy was crazy. Look up Batman's Wikipedia. It's crazy.
All right, we'll have some fun
He
facts
got,
at
like,
the end of the
syphilis-
episode.
He got like syphilis and his nose fell off, and there were guys had to carry him around. He was crazy. Anyway, this is not a Melbourne history podcast.
Maybe you should.
All right, so we've gone through more than half of the show, and we've hardly even scratched the surface talking
Yeah.
about the Batman. So I'm just going to go back to my notes that I took after watching the movie, and we'll just try to get through them as quickly as we can. I personally, I'm not a fan of the 70s muscle car Batmobile. I know there is precedent for it in the comics, and I know people like that.
I do enjoy it.
I personally like the futuristic, more elongated Batmobile, or I love the Tumbler, the tank from the Nolan movies.
I do agree, though. It's hard to make a war vehicle out of a muscle car, right? Because the muscle car is just not as...
Yeah, and again, this comes back to, it's supposed to be Batman early years. He's just making a car out of what he's found. But I don't buy it, especially with, like we said, the gadgets and stuff. But anyway, that's just a personal aesthetic choice.
I agree with you.
that
It
I
doesn't fit the film,
Yeah.
but it's cool.
Yeah. What I loved about it was the sound, and that the jet engine on the back, and the way he uses it to intimidate the Penguin. Even though I thought it was dumb that that chase didn't need to happen because the Penguin was slowly running to his car.
Yeah.
Batman runs away to get into his car.
Just a rev.
Just to rev at the Penguin, who stands there and then gets in. So Batman could have taken out all of these guys before they even got to their cars, and the car chase wouldn't have been necessary. You could have easily rewritten it so that he has to save Catwoman, and they get away in their cars, and then he has to get in his car to chase them. But yeah, it was just. Also, so when he's running away from. Oh, okay. So maybe I don't know when we'll talk about. Maybe we'll talk about it now. There's the guy with the bomb collar on, and it's about to go off, and Batman's just literally standing face to face with this guy who has a bomb on him, and it blows up in Batman's face, and Batman doesn't have one scratch on him.
Yes, that was probably the most ridiculous part of the movie for me. The fact that Batman just didn't die.
Yeah, and it was so weird that Batman didn't even try to jump away or anything.
He just took an explosion to the face.
Especially because, as we established, his cowl is just a leather thing. So it's like, and I know they established he has the bulletproof armor, and that people online are saying, oh, he puts his arm up to protect his face, but there's literally no singe marks, no soot marks, nothing. He's not injured at all. And again, if this is the grounded, realistic version, an inexperienced Batman, he should have broken a rib or fractured an arm or dislocated a shoulder or something.
Yeah.
And the only reason they do this is so all the cops can very gingerly take him back to the police station without ever trying to take off his mask in transit. Yeah. Then once they're at the police station, they can all argue about taking off the mask, which is when he comes back to consciousness and fights them all and escapes. I'm like, this is dumb.
Yeah, so dumb.
You could have done this in a million different ways. And
it would have been better, yeah.
Done that. Also, when he's escaping the police station, he finally uses the grappling hook and zips up the staircase. I'm like,
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, in my seat going, woo! Then he...
Like a Tuscan Raider?
Then comes a stupid moment where his CGI wingsuit comes out, and he flies off the thing, and I'm like, excuse me, is this the realistic, grounded, no gadgets Batman, or is this...
comic-y, cartoony Batman,
And it also looked like crap because it's like GoPro headcam footage, and he's just like... And then he like hits a bus and rolls off, and again, not really hurt.
We just saw the grappling hook, right? He could have used the grappling hook somehow.
He literally should have just opened his cape like he does in the comic books and glided down. It would have been a great moment.
He could have used the
Nolan does this much better.
He could have used the grappling hook somehow to
another
building,
just
do another hook to another building.
And... you could have even had that classic shot from is it The Dark Knight Returns? What's that comic book where he's got that classic shot of Batman jumping across the city?
I think so.
With the lightning in the background. Yeah. They could have played with that. They could have had him with the grappling hook shooting like Spider-Man style.
They could have done like the Arkham Asylum games where you you use the grappling hook to zip line to another building and you use that momentum to glide.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have done anything, and what they did was stupid. Especially because he pulls the little tag and his big giant wingsuit comes out. I'm like, where was that hiding? Excuse me. You see, it's full of comic book bullshit, even though it's trying to be realistic. I'm like, I would have been fine with the comic booky stuff, but you're pretending to be, oh, this is the grounded Zodiac verse. You know? Also, at the end when there's the big fight scene's pretty cool. He does some cool Arkham Asylum style swinging kicks and stuff. But then it's really dumb. He's hanging on the edge and there's a guy who's slowly reloading his shotgun and, about to shoot Batman in his face, which is his one
my one weakness.
But where a bomb went off not long before and he was fine. And then Catwoman comes and saves him. But I thought what was really dumb is that the stadium's flooded and there's this big sign with like electrical sparks coming out and it's about to fall on these people or whatever. And Batman's whole thing at the end is to sacrifice himself by cutting this off and just falling to the ground. And he hits the water and then he just gets up and he's fine. And I was just like, what? There's no tension, nothing. And again, people are like, oh, it's symbolic. He's reborn. He's baptized in the water. And I'm like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
like there's no real. One of the problems I have with the climax of this movie is the emotional stakes. I don't think are high enough.
The gravitas is not reflected in the impact.
Yeah.
So they want to have these stakes.
Yeah.
But there doesn't seem to be any genuine risk to Batman.
Yeah.
So it's like no matter what happens, he just gets up. He's like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Like I was trying to explain to someone, I'm like, at the end of the Dark Knight, you have the Joker 2 boats plot going on, where Batman's trying to rescue the hostages in this building. He's trying to get the Joker, who's threatening to blow up giving people the key to blow up each other's boats, so they get and so there's this moral question of like, do you blow up the other boat, or do you blow up your boat? Like, what's the right thing to do in this situation? And Joker is trying to show Batman that everyone else is just as bad as he is when it comes down to it, and that Batman and Joker aren't that different, and whatever. And so there's this really emotional thing going on, and this action thing. Then right after that, you've got the whole Two-Face thing where he kidnaps Jim Gordon and his family. And so there's another emotional, characters we're invested in, and a child who is vulnerable, and it's Batman has to make this choice, and Harvey Dent, who's this character we've come to care about, he's become twisted and evil, and the Joker's plan has basically succeeded in turning this good man bad. And so all these emotional stakes and moral questions, and and then Batman has to literally take the blame for Harvey Dent's death, and basically be hunted and exiled until the next movie, where he's been Batman's disappeared. And it's like, you get this movie, and it's like, I don't feel like any of that. Like, you've got the Riddler thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, we've forgotten about him for an hour, so Catwoman can go off and kill Falcone, and then Falcone is killed, and then we ramp up the Joker thing, the Riddler thing again, and then he's caught straight away, and then there's a conversation, and then he's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to blow up the city. And I'm like, hang on. Riddler's whole
You're giving me a headache.
Yeah, Riddler's whole thing throughout the movie is, I'm going to show the people of Gotham how corrupt their institutions are, how corrupt their politicians and police are.
Yeah.
And so he's deliberately targeting specific
certain people
to pull the wool from people's eyes.
It's all
and then at the end of the movie, he's like, oh, and also I'm going to kill everyone.
It's just so needlessly complicated.
Yeah. And also, like, Batman's whole thing is that he fails throughout the whole movie. He can't figure out, he can't save any of the victims. He can't figure out who the Riddler is or where he is. Even though literally he could have just, when he got the photos of the Penguin coming out of the Iceberg Lounge or whatever, he could have gone like, well, where was that photo taken? But I'll let that slide.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like he keeps failing throughout the whole movie. And again, there's people are like, oh, but he's the inexperienced, the new, Batman. I'm like, but even an idiot who's never investigated anything would figure out what the murder weapon was.
So the problem
when
is
Batman's trying to figure out what the carpet tool is and he doesn't know.
Yeah.
And
look, the issue I have is that they're presenting. I remember I was keen for this film because people kept saying this is the detective one.
Yeah,
you've had the action ones, we've had the bat flick, the violent one.
Yeah.
This is the detective one. If you like the comics, you're gonna love this because it's the classic detective story. Like Long Halloween, people kept drawing comparisons to Long Halloween, which is mostly like this slow burn detective story where we slowly put the pieces of the puzzle together. The problem with this is that Batman has all the smart gadgets, but he doesn't seem to have that natural detective instinct. Because Batman is like, he's half a ninja, he's half Sherlock Holmes, right? So when we get down to it, it's like you said, he should have identified the tool. He should have put pieces together, like you said. He should have been able to look at the angles. Like, and I think that they
They-
didn't build up
this is
that,
why-
that natural intelligence that he
this
has
this is why it
as much
falls
as they needed to.
This is why it falls apart when you start to think about it. Because on the surface, you're like 3-hour detective movie. He's putting together the puzzle pieces. Oh my god, it's so smart. When you think about it, it's just like a large section of the movie, probably almost an hour, maybe, relies on the fact that Batman doesn't know his Spanish well enough, and that he has to chase the Penguin, tie him up, and the Penguin has to be like, "You're a dumbass. This is what it means."
Yeah.
And then he has to go, "Oh." It's like a large portion of the mystery of this mystery movie is based on garbage.
Yeah.
That could literally, you could cut out an hour of this movie if Batman could know Spanish.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
again, like they're trying to present this thing of like, well, he's so rich and affluent that he never had to do, he never had to learn, working class things. He never had to learn what a carpet tool is. It's like, I'm working class. I don't know what a carpet tool is. But if I was investigating a murder, I would Google, what is this weirdly shaped murder weapon that
Also,
I've just found?
Batman's a genius.
Yeah.
People forget that. He's not just a guy that beats
Also,
up thugs on the street. He's a genius.
You mentioned Sherlock Holmes. The reason Batman is fun and interesting, and the reason Sherlock Holmes is fun and interesting, is because we like seeing smart people put things together. We like seeing the smart detective figure out all the clues.
Yeah, that thing every normal people miss, and he picks it up and then he explains it, or
so
it gets shown.
It's not fun to watch a dumb guy stumble and fail through a
and
3-hour mystery.
The other problem with this version
While
of the
being
Batman,
completely humorless.
the other version of this Batman is that the Batman from the comics and the Batman from Arkham Asylum, he's also kind of a ninja. Like,
I wanted to mention that.
He can take people out quietly before anybody knows he's there. He is the darkness.
So,
like everyone's like, I am the night. Everyone's familiar with these quotes.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a brawler in this film, and it doesn't work.
Two things. One, because they're, like I just said, they're trying to do this whole, he's rich and so he doesn't know certain things about how people actually live and what people actually need to live in a better city. And at the end, he realizes it, and he's like, I have to be a better Bruce Wayne. I have to be a better rich guy, whatever. I'm like, yes, you can do that, but Bruce Wayne is not a character in this movie.
Yeah.
So, again, the sequel will have to pick up this slack.
Yeah.
You could have easily sewn
Sewn
those
it in.
threads into the story, yeah. Also, the ninjas thing, like you said, Batman's always been a ninja. Even in movies where you don't see him training as a ninja, you kind of just assume that at some point he trained in some sort of martial arts or some sort of, thing like that. But this movie definitely makes him feel like just a normal guy who put on a suit.
A street brawler, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's fine. But then he becomes more like the Punisher. Like, he literally just slowly walks up to people.
I hated that,
punches them a lot, and then slowly walks away. And I'm like, again, I understand what they're trying to do. There's ominous footsteps. I'm like, but again, Batman literally, like, I don't get a sense he ever trained. And literally the only hint we get is Alfred saying, like, I trained you. Yeah. So I think in this universe, Alfred literally just taught
how to, like, fight, military fighting kind of. Yeah.
I'm like, well, again, they're trying to have it both ways. He's the grounded, realistic Batman who didn't train to be a ninja, but he's also high tech.
It's like, what does Batman represent to a villain? Right? He's omnipresent.
Yeah.
He could come.
Fear.
He could come
anywhere.
Exactly.
He's fear. That's why he uses the bat.
He could come from anywhere at any time.
Yeah.
People fear him. Thugs fear him. He's a myth, basically.
Yeah. He'll give you Ebola.
Yeah.
He's a bat. He'll give you rabies.
No, but still, my point
Don't
is...
get bitten.
My point is, like you said, the Punisher is feared as well, for different reasons.
Yeah.
But the bat is the bat because, no villain is safe while the bat is active. Doesn't matter where in the city you are.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, he's driving a muscle car, it's real loud.
Yeah.
He's kind of violent. He doesn't just appear from the darkness. He knocks on the door first.
Yeah. Again,
it's not really the Batman. It's like this. It's like the edgy, Snyder-y kind of Batman.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like, Batman Begins does this all better in half its runtime.
Yeah.
And in an hour less total runtime. So, all right, we've got 10 minutes and about probably an hour's worth of conversation to get to. So I'm going to speed round. I like the idea of Riddler being like an incel QAnon, Reddit shit poster.
It is very timely.
Yeah, that's very timely. It's the whole mass shooter thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
again, at the climax of the movie where you got all these Riddler goons, I'm like, I don't really care about the emotional stakes aren't there. Like we mentioned, Colin Farrell is great as the Penguin. John Turturro is fantastic as Falcone.
Yeah.
He's always fantastic.
Yeah, but
Not my favorite John Turturro project this year.
We will talk about that next week. But he's so good in this movie.
Yeah.
Andy Serkis is fine as Alfred, but like we said, he doesn't get enough to do. He doesn't get enough to do with Bruce. Jeffrey Wright as Gordon, great. When they cast him again, I was like, yes, amazing. His relationship with Batman in this movie is supposed to be a main focus of this movie. Again,
We don't see much of it
didn't
really.
really get a good sense of their thing. Again, the Nolan movies do it better because at least you get a sense of who Jim Gordon, his personal life, his family, where he stands. And there's a lot of scenes in the Dark Knight movies of just Jim Gordon going to like the DA's office and going like, oh, we need a task force. Who can we trust? This, that, and the other. There's an internal political element to it. This movie has the whole Riddler thing of like your institutions are corrupt, your police are corrupt, but we don't actually get to see
The groundwork
any
on
of
that,
the
yeah.
internal workings. We never get to see Jim Gordon witnessing the corruption at the police station and going like, I'm the one good cop, what can I do? And again, when they chase Batman out of the police station, then they just never pick up that thread ever again, and the police are not after him anymore. And then right at the end, when Falcone walks out of the building, he's like, I own the police. And he walks out and he's like, but we're all good cops here. We've gotten rid of all the bad cops. I'm like, excuse me? That would have been a major plot point of another movie. But in this movie, you're wasting so much time on Batman's bad Spanish.
Yeah.
It's like, excuse me, like we needed a whole subplot of Jim Gordon while Batman is doing the vigilante thing and trying to track down the Riddler. Jim Gordon is weeding out or potentially even using Riddler's information to weed out the corruption. But we just don't see. This movie's actually dumb. It just presents itself as really smart.
Yeah.
Okay, we did that. Oh, Nirvana,
Yeah.
we get it.
We get it. Grunge.
They play the same song 1,000 times. We get it. He's emo, okay. He doesn't take the makeup off. The makeup doesn't disappear when he takes off the mask. Get it? He's emo. He's realistic.
I did like that touch though.
Yeah, but Kick-Ass
Put it
already did it.
Yeah.
So it makes it funny.
Yeah.
And he looks like a raccoon. We talked about him being a detective. Grounded, but not really.
Yeah.
Doesn't get a scratch.
Look,
also, sorry. The action is mostly okay. The visuals are mostly very good. There are some CGI moments that stick out like sore thumb.
Oh, that car chase.
I know there's a lot of CGI in this movie that's invisible. That's all great. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there are some moments, the wingsuit moment and the car chase and maybe a couple more, where it's just like, ugh, why?
Yeah.
Nolan would have done it practically.
To be fair, Nolan also crashed a plane.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
No, I know. But most directors
remember the
don't
Dark
do
Knight?
that. I know.
When he flipped the truck, this movie has so many crashing trucks, and it's all
Bane on the
CGI
plane
nonsense, and it's all like.
While you're sifting through your notes, I just want to say though, as much as we're picking holes in this film, like I didn't hate it.
I would watch it again. I did watch it again. I watched it twice, and I would watch it again in future.
There's promise that's just not being realized.
Exactly. And in terms of the overarching Batman movies,
and when you do pick this movie apart, it does fall apart.
Yeah, it's not.
Look,
it's
if it was
near the
on,
best one.
I'd watch it, but it does fall apart when you start thinking about it.
I think it's visually so strong that it is enjoyable to watch because you're like, oh, this is.
Yeah,
But
And like they don't hate the Batman, kind of like how Snyder's interpretation.
Oh yeah,
was
it's
very...
not as insulting as Snyder. Yeah. Because you can tell, the filmmakers actually like what they're doing and have knowledge. Like the director Matt Reeves, he's like, he wants to do Court of Owls and he wants to do Mr. Freeze. I'm like, how do you do Mr. Freeze in this grounded, realistic?
Yeah,
he just sells ice.
Well, I'm assuming he's
like a drug dealer.
I'm assuming he's going to be like the ice truck killer from Dexter or something.
Like, I'm down.
Maybe he freezes people instead of murdering them with a knife. He freezes people with what do you call it?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
I know
about.
what you're talking about.
But see, this brings me to another point. I like grounded, realistic interpretations. That's fine. But we kind of already got that with Nolan.
Yeah.
I want the more comic booky, not all the way campy, crazy, cartoony, but a bit more...
Something a bit fun.
Yeah,
It's
a
like
bit more
doesn't-
fun.
the-
Like, I want Mr. Freeze to be Mr. Freeze. I want him to be
Yeah.
a big robot suit with... that's why I
big
always...
blue guy with
Yeah.
a gun that freezes people.
That's why I always...
Bring back Arnie.
That's why... that's why I always like the Arkham Asylum games, because they have this perfect balance
yeah.
of like grounded, gritty, realistic, violent,
and comic book.
but also kind of cartoony, comic booky.
Yeah.
I feel like they could do a really good live action version of that.
Yeah, exactly. You want a universe where, people do get hurt. Bruce
Yeah.
can get hurt, but also, there's a lady that can control plants.
Exactly.
Like, both things can exist
Yeah,
simultaneously.
exactly. Yeah, both
and you
things
don't need to make it too far one way or the other. They
Yeah.
just need to both coexist. That's
Exactly.
all.
Yeah.
And reasons? Because reasons. You don't need to elaborate it. You don't need to say she was scientifically, genetically altered or something. She just controls
I've said
plants.
this a million times before. A movie doesn't have to be realistic. It just has to have a set of rules and stick to those rules. So if you set up that this is a world in which this stuff can exist, of course it can exist.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
It's like, how does she talk to plants? Injected with whatever. Doesn't matter.
Exactly. Also, this movie is PG-13, obviously, because it's a superhero movie. They're trying to maximize their audience. But it does do a pretty good job of being very...
Edgy.
Giving the perception of violence and being edgy. Although, if you do pay attention, every time there's violence, it's like out of focus or off screen. There's only one F-bomb. No one's allowed to smoke. Even the Penguin, controversially, Colin Farrell wanted to have a cigar and Warner Brothers wouldn't let him. So there's still a big problem in Hollywood of
Just
like...
give him a vape and be like, there's no nicotine in this, babe.
I'm the 21st
It's just the
century
juice.
penguin.
Yeah.
He looks at the camera and he's like, I don't do nicotine. And then they just continue on with the film.
Don't smoke, kids. Remember, I'm a bad guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there is still a problem where it's just like they're trying to be adult, but they can't.
Yeah.
This movie does a good job of
Of
presenting
towing the
itself
line,
as
yeah.
adult without actually going over the line. I remember when The Dark Knight came out and my dentist asked me if her 8-year-old could watch it, and I said no, like without hesitation. This movie makes The Dark Knight look like the 60s Batman in terms of for an 8-year-old, I would say.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, this movie is so much darker and more violent in its presentation, just its atmosphere. Even though like the Nolan movies are better, I'm just saying
Yeah.
in that
It has
sort of
the
regard.
appearance of like a kind of viciousness to it, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really deliver.
Yeah. All right, we literally
is a
have
good thing.
2 minutes
In a way.
and still like half an hour to go. So I'm gonna just read the
notes.
and see. Hopefully they make sense.
You did good, though, James. You've done good.
Batman makes things worse. He finally realizes at the end when the guy says, I am
Yeah.
vengeance, which is his catchphrase. And it's like, yeah, we get it. And I like this idea of like, he can be vengeance
Yeah.
versus hope. Like, he can be a symbol
Yeah.
of hope and vengeance. But again, the second movie will probably deal with this stuff. And it's just like, yeah. Batman not killing is a very important part of the character. But I feel like this version of Batman definitely would kill. And the only reason he doesn't is because he's based on the character we all know and love. So I feel like that's actually a problem for the movie, because one of my favorite parts of Batman Begins is him not wanting to stoop to the level of the people who killed his parents.
Yeah.
And there's that great scene where he's about to shoot Joe Chill, and someone beats him to it. And that moment for me is one of the best moments in comic book movie history. And Nolan's a genius. And this movie doesn't do anything to develop that idea of him not wanting to kill. He has one throwaway line to Catwoman of like, oh, I don't kill because then we're as bad as the bad guys. But this version of Batman definitely would kill. Also, this version
he would.
Also, this version of Batman, it only makes sense for this at the end of the movie when he realizes he has to be hope and not just vengeance. It makes more sense to him to stop being Batman and to use his wealth and privilege for good.
Yeah.
But again, the only reason they can't do that is because he's the Batman. You have to have a sequel, and so
Yeah.
the movie, 3 hours of this movie presents is just like, and at the end of the day, he learns he can be both Batman and Bruce Wayne, and I'm like, hang on, you've just presented me a whole argument of corruption and the Waynes weren't as angels as they were thought that they were, and you can't tell me Batman is still a good idea in this universe. So they did a bad job there. Warner Brothers has balls releasing a movie like this, 3-hour detective movie that borders on something that children can't watch. So give them props to that.
Yeah.
But like I just said, there needs to be some updating in the ratings. I like the idea of like the mayor's kid and Batman having like an unspoken bond. Like they both lost someone.
Oh yeah.
And Batman kind of just stares at this kid and is like, "Oh my god, that's me."
Yeah.
They don't develop it much, but I like that idea. There's a hint at Venom when he injects himself with a green substance at the end and becomes super aggressive.
You mean Bane?
But I don't. Yeah, Bane's chemical.
Yeah.
Steroid.
Callum's like, where's the symbiote?
yeah.
Not there, not Marvel Venom. But again in this universe, it's like that's such a throwaway thing. I was like, why did that happen right at the end of the movie? Like that was such a weird Easter egg to throw in. There's a prequel novel that I haven't read, but I saw someone online review it. There's a whole bunch of stuff about Riddler growing up in the orphanage, which was actually in the old Wayne Manor, and that they moved into Wayne Tower. I'm like, this all needed to be in the movie.
That's what I was gonna say. What's the point of having it in a book? Who cares?
And there's a whole backstory thing, and there's this whole backstory of like,
if anything, make it a comic.
Yeah, there's this whole backstory with Bruce and Alfred. I'm like, this all needed to be in the movie. There's going to be an Arkham Asylum spin-off about the Wayne, Martha Wayne's ties. I'm like,
make it stop,
dumb.
please.
A Penguin show. Yeah, he was great. Don't need a show. We'll talk all about this stuff when it comes out or in the future or whatever. But we're way out of time. Thanks for listening.
Not a terrible film. Not perfect either.
It's just, I wish we could have done this review when we originally planned, a week after the movie came out. But I think this will do. I'm sure it'll come up in conversation.
We got through most of it.
Yeah.
I'll say we had a good conversation.
Let's
not sell ourselves short.
Yeah.
For reviewing a movie that we haven't seen in months, we did all right.
2 months.
All right, we are way out of time. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next week. Adios, cousins.